If you've decided that I look like a mess, don't worry, I already know myself. Hi, this is Ingrid and welcome to my WinterBookLand. And as you probably noticed, my voice is really gross right now. And that's because I was originally planning to film this later in the day, but then my family got the idea to take a weekend trip to the city. So therefore we're going to have to film this very early, and I just woke up, and I don't think the rest of my family has woken up themselves yet, so you'll have to excuse me, but I'm going to be a little bit quiet in this video. So as you can probably tell from the title, today we're going to talk about books that I don't necessarily think are underrated, but I think that a lot of people don't know exist, and that you should definitely read because they're very good. So it's basically just a book recommendation for books that I think not a lot of people know about, but that a lot of people could like. And before we get into the real stuff, I want to recommend a very short trilogy. I just have the Kindle version, so I can't show you. And the thing is, I can't like fully recommend this because it's been a very long time since I read it and I can't remember a lot. I can remember just a few like details. The first book is called The Stag's Run and it's by Saya Feli, and I really liked this series. It didn't take me so long to get through it, so it's kind of those books that you can just read through quickly. It's about this boy named Ren, who is the bastard son of the queen of this country, Ferene or Reine. See, I can't remember. And one day his half-brother, you know, the heir to the throne, is brutally murdered along with his father. So therefore Ren has to escape because he's been accused of this, and he has to escape with this slave from this other country who was accused as being like an accessory in the murder, and it's basically him having to defend himself, raise an alliance, kind of try to take back his country from these people who killed his father and brother and took over it. And that sounds like a very simplistic plot, and it is, I know, but the way Saya Feli delves into it, I think she did it in a way that made it very engaging to read. But what I want to comment in this book is that it has a very good chemistry between the two main characters. They work very well together, they have this kind of good dynamic that is very fun to read. The books are very fast paced, like sometimes that's a bad point because you don't really get a lot of development here and there, but in the terms of the story, it's really great that it went so fast by, so we didn't get bored by any of the points. And the character development of each character was also incredibly great, and you could really see why they changed and how they changed, and Saya Feli is really good at writing subtle character development, so it's not so obvious. So now we're going over to the books that I have read more recently and actually can tell you something about. And the first book we're going to mention is Last Seen Living by Caleb Roerig. This book revolves around a boy named Flynn. And one day his girlfriend January ends up missing. Nobody can find her, she's just completely gone. And they suspect that she's been murdered. And of course Flynn is a suspect, and because of some convoluted facts, there are secrets that he needs to keep that January knew about, which kind of put him in a little bit of a bad light. And throughout this book he's trying to find out why January disappeared and uncovers some things about her past and how she's been living her life. I can mention that This book, along with the series I mentioned earlier, the main character here is at least gay, and I think the main character in Ironbreakers is bisexual. And just so you know, there's a scene in this book where the main character is forced to come out to his mom and dad by a police officer. Just so you're aware, if you're uncomfortable with that kind of thing happening. One very big positive factor about this book is the fact that the teens in this book are written as teens. You don't have any of that embarrassing teen slang or just actions that are not understandable. All the characters act like teens, and really the author did a really good job of setting himself close to teenage culture and the way we act. One thing I want to mention is that this book is kind of on the border to insta-love. I don't really think it's insta-love, but kind of his first interaction with another person, like, it turns like 0 to 100 very quickly. So it's kind of on the border to insta-love, I feel like. The mystery in this book kind of has you on the edge of your seat because you just want to find out about January, and some things are kind of obvious, but they're also not. They're just great, and I think Caleb Roerig managed to write it in a really engaging way. So if this sounds like a book for you, I would definitely recommend reading it, and also the cover is really cool, so maybe buy it as well. The next book we're going to talk about is the Twist Rose Key by Tone Almhjell. You may have heard about this book. I remember it being very hyped in Norway, at least. So this centers around a girl named Lynn, and she just lost her pet rat, I think, or mouse, named Rufus, and has buried him in the garden behind her house. And then she finds a gateway to a country called Silver, where all beloved dead pets go after they die. In this country there is a winter prince who is missing, so Lynn and Rufus has to find this prince and avoid all forces who want to harm them. This book has very good writing. Even if it is a children's book, it has a lot of adult themes, so therefore I think adults also could read it without trouble, and the language makes it very easy to do that because it's a very universal language she uses. The plot is very wholesome. The entire pet thing is extremely cute. It's a very heartwarming story. It reminds me a lot of like fairy tales from Norway. And maybe Sonalvem took some inspiration from that, but it feels like a very like wholesome, just precious text, really. The world building in this book is also very good, and Sonalvem manages to just express things in a way that doesn't feel forced and also isn't a complete info dump. So that is also very good. It is a very emotional book as well. And there is a sequel, but I think it's just come out in Norwegian yet. Or I think there's an English version, yeah. If it is, I'll put the name of it up on the screen. But yeah, definitely give this book a try, it is very good. The next book we're going to talk about is kind of... like, I found this hidden in my basement or up in our cabin. So this is 0.4 by Mike Lancaster, and this book is a sci-fi book. Basically it's kind of this found footage thing. They found some tapes where a guy named Kyle Straker says that he used to exist but he doesn't anymore, and that this story kind of contains a story from a past world. That's really all I can say without spoiling it, because like the plot twist happens kind of halfway through the book and I don't want to spoil it for you. So this book is very ominous, it's very like creepy, I would say. If you want a negative, the start is kind of awkward. It's very like awkward thing happening, and it just made me want to skip the pages. But I powered through it, and I'm thankful I did, because the rest of the plot is actually very good. If I have one more criticism, it's that it's too short, because like this book is just about 300 pages, and I think and you see like the format is very like small, but I think really this plot could have gone further. Like with the way he presented it now, these 300 pages fit very well, but I would have wanted to see a little bit more, if you get what I mean. And it's also very interesting. It's a very interesting view on sci-fi and this whole alien thing. It's really unique, I would say. So like if you're looking for unique sci-fi that kind of fucks a little with your brain, I would definitely recommend this book. And then we're gonna go over to a little bit more contemporary stuff. It is the novel Whatever by S.G. Gosley. This book centers around Mike Tate, whose life is kind of a mess at this point. And he is just starting his junior year, and everything kind of goes a little shit for him, and he has troubles with figuring out himself, his goals in life, and also his sexuality. The thing is, the plot is very messy, but it is messy in a good way, so you just get the whole teenage experience here. And it also has the same thing as Lost in Leaving. The teenagers are written very much realistically, so you don't get any cringe moments like that. I think this is really just directed towards teens, not towards adults who want to feel good about how much they know about teens and teen culture, you know. There are very realistic conflicts and decisions that the characters make. And just be aware though, if you have a problem with, you know, the whole plotline of, oh, I knew you were gay before you knew it yourself, and I have to tell you that you're gay. There's a lot of that in this book from the main character's previous girlfriend, so you just need to know that because it kind of made me a little bit uncomfortable, and I don't think I really have any more to say about this. It is a very short book. It's really easy to get through. The language is very easy, so I would definitely recommend reading it just for the experience of reading a little bit of a messy, just amusing book. Then we're gonna go over to a trilogy that I think a lot of people have heard about this. It's not underrated. I just think that a lot of more people need to read it, because it's a shit show, but it's a very, very good shit show. That is the Old Ferdinand trilogy by Nora Sakavic. This series revolves around a boy named Neil Yosten, and he's on the run from his father, who is a very famous hitman. And now you may wonder what this has to do with the foxhole, like a foxhole court. Well, he plays a fictional sport called Exi, and he joins a Exi team. And he joins an Exi team on Palmetto State University. And at the same time, Neil has a little bit of mental, personal problems that he has to get through. Holy shit, this book is a mess of just mob battles and sports, and you know, it's the only series that has me interested in sports, and it's fictional, so and just be aware though, because this series has a lot of, you know, questionable things. So after this I'm going to tell you a lot of like trigger warnings, and a lot of these trigger warnings come from the fact that the team that Neil joins, it is kind of a mismatch of just messed up people, because this coach who got together this team wanted to give kind of the failures of society a second chance. So all of the people on the team have problems. So there's a lot of drug abuse and just unconventional ways of dealing with trauma. In the second book there's an attempted rape, and there's a character who has a history of being raped, and there's also a murder at the end of the first book. And in the second book I also want to say there's a lot of like psychological torture. So I just want you to be aware when you're reading this series. The thing is, the characters here are very good developed. Like, you can understand their actions, and the way that they act is just very interesting. And also the plot is such a mess that it's just fun to continue reading, because you don't know what's gonna happen, and you kind of just want to know if Neil is going to end up happy or if he's just going to die, basically. One very positive factor along with this is that Neil is a very sarcastic main character. He says what he wants to say, and he has stood for some of the most iconic moments of this series. But it's kind of a found family story at the same time. It is really heartwarming in that sense that this team kind of is a family. It is just really, really great. You should definitely read this book, or the entire series if you want, because it's just something you need to read to really understand the experience of. And then I have 2 more books that I need to talk about, and these books I bought on Kindle instead of actually buying them, because I didn't know if I would like them or not. And I have been a dumbass and not written up the author's name. First book I'm going to mention is Radiant by Grace Draven. Okay, so this takes place in a fictional world where 2 different races, humans and another race of species, they're very humanoid but at the same time not. And they're kind of like, there's unrest on their borders. So the younger prince of this country and a well-standing girl from the human side are put together in an arranged marriage. And it's kind of just them trying to sail through this entire political thing and also just being really fucking cute. This book could have suffered from a bad, you know, arranged marriage plot, but it didn't. These 2 characters have a really good dynamic. The way they talk to each other is just, it's just kind of adorable, really. They don't act the way you would expect 2 people in a YA romance to act during a arranged marriage. They're very, very aware of how their actions would be presented to everyone else. And the plot, it has a lot of tropes, but I don't feel like the characters like are swallowed up in them. So the tropes are there, but they're used very well. One thing I really want to mention is, if you're a little bit like queasy about sex and stuff, don't read this book, because when it develops and they get kind of, you know, affectionate with each other, like, if you don't like over the top descriptions and reactions, you can just skip the sex scenes, really, because you don't lose a lot. But she writes them in a very tasteful manner, I would say. I can't really think of anything more to say about the series or any more criticisms, because I just think it's a really well written book. I felt like I totally butchered that explanation, but we're just gonna go with it because I can't come up with anything more to say, and we're leaving in half an hour. The last book is kind of my favorite book that I ever read on Kindle, and that is True Letters from a Fictional Life by Kenneth Logan. There's a boy named James Liddell, and he has this kind of thing where if he wants to say something to somebody, he doesn't say it to them, but he writes letters instead that he never sends. And this kind of comes back to bite him in the ass, because suddenly the letters are missing. Some of the letters are missing, and they're starting to get mailed out to people. And I wouldn't say this is like the mail plot, the entire letters being mailed. I think it's most about James and his discovery of himself and accepting himself. That is the main plot. I just want you to know. This book, first I want to warn, includes a character being outed. You know, as many of these coming out books do. It's really annoying at this point. Good points about this book is that their characters are very funny. And they also talk like proper teenagers would. I think you're seeing a trend here with what books I want you to read. Like, they always find something funny, and one problem with that is that scenes can kind of shift mood very quickly and not so, you know, coherently, but I think that's a minor problem because it doesn't happen a lot. Another good point of this book is that the male friendships are so good. Normally in books you don't really see developed friendships between boys that are like written very well, but I think Kenneth Logan just did their, like James's friend group relationship just great, and their friendship is just a very precious part of this book. It's really fun to read. It kind of criticizes the idea that you own someone's sexuality, that you have a right to know someone's sexuality. It is very critical of that idea, and I really love that characters who had that mindset didn't get excused, and I think it's really great that the author chose to include it so that people who have this mindset can kind of understand how fucked up it is. The thing is, I don't know how to explain it because I love the book so much, so I don't know what to explain without sounding biased, but just try to read it. Oh, what happened to my voice now? But just read it because it's a really great story that you need to read. So those were my books that you absolutely need to read. I hope you actually found something interesting in this video. If you have more questions about the book or you have read one of them and want to discuss them, please leave a comment below. If you liked what I had to say, please leave a like and maybe subscribe as well. And I will see you in my next video. Have a lovely day and goodbye!